Yeah, you wanna put that dish in your mouth.
Wish you could slide into my mind and make me mine. Push play rewind. Let's whip outside, and so am I.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dylan B. Dickerson White, Mr. Trans USA 2022. That's really long. I really need to find a way to say it faster.
Yeah,
But I'm here with our Miss Trans Maryland 2023, Heather Marie Thomas, and she's here to introduce herself a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the things going on since we live around the same area, and maybe some of these questions we've had pop up in our groups. So without further ado, Heather, would you like to say a few things about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Heather Marie Thomas. Like Dylan said, I've been a performer and a stage presence now for about 10 years. Been in the nightlife, honestly, for as long as I can remember. Been a member of the queer community since I was 15, early 15. And yeah, I'm just one of your, normal, untalented social justice warrior performers.
There's so many of us.
Too special. So there's so many of us that just, aren't on anybody's radar.
Oh no, that's one of the things I think is funny is as soon as we announce and there's oh, and then people see that there's a reason the way we do things we do, and it's funny because the way that Trans USA works, there's a lot of advocacy work involved. So people who have already been hitting the ground running have been doing well in that, and I know that maybe that makes some people a little nervous.
Yeah, I think that's what gets a lot of people so confused about this system is that it's not just about the stage presence. And I'm already hearing rumors about oh, X is going to do well, X is going to do well. But I'm like, but are these people leaders? Are they activists? Are they advocates? That's what the system's about. And that's why I'm running for it, honestly, because I've done advocacy work for as long as I can remember across many fields. Why not bring it home to something that I believe in and that I experience?
That's kind of the biggest thing. And you're right. They're always going to be in pageants. People were going to talk about who they think's going to do and who's not. And then, everybody has ideas and everybody has thoughts. But when it comes to something that's very different for most people and very different from pageants that are out there in general, I think that I can safely say that we don't know what to expect. How will people do in certain categories? It all depends on how people prepare. For something that's new to them, and we're obviously we're doing a lot we can to help people along the way, and you hit the first question already in the way you answered that, which was what made you interested in the system. So I think that maybe I'll switch that question around, so because it's kind of going more into your goals. So if I asked you what the title of Miss Trans USA would mean for you personally and how you'd bring yourself to that title, what would you say to that?
I would say that to me, it would be finally some form of grounding in legitimacy in the work I've done as an advocate and activist over the years, considering that most of my work is in the online space, as it is nowadays, most of it is. It's really hard to get legitimacy in there. I didn't necessarily go to college. I haven't served on boards anywhere, but I'm out here speaking on experiences not only of me but those around me. Having a title like this would give me a legitimacy to speak with that would allow me to say others in my community want me to be their voice on a grander platform.
That's actually kind of incredible that you brought that home. It's we've all been doing this work, and maybe we don't have this degree or that, but it's something to show for the work you've been doing, and people will know more about the work you're doing that way. And I think you bring that up, it's really interesting. I saw this one article about jobs don't even really want you to list the school you went to. They don't care about, they just want to care about the work you're doing, and I think that's amazing.
Yep, and I'm definitely in an industry where that's true, so that's kind of why I apply that to all my life. I work in the restaurant industry, and that's an industry where if you put in the hard work, you'll get the recognition. And that's kind of what drag is, and pageantry for a lot of us is. Put in the work, you get the recognition.
Yeah, and it's a great equalizer in a way. It doesn't matter where you came from before. It doesn't matter you know, like what school you went to or this, when it comes to the stage or it comes to this type of community, it's like we're all on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like working in the restaurant industry, that's an interesting thing. I want to like, as like a trans person, how do you think has that been more difficult than you expected, or kind of what you expected?
I can say that I've definitely broken glass ceilings in the industry. Up in Baltimore, I was leading a restaurant with another trans woman, and as best we can tell, that's the only time that's ever happened, ever. She sadly passed, so I left that restaurant because I just couldn't deal with that anymore. But everywhere I go, I have to break glass ceilings. I have to get people accustomed to being not just like acquaintances with a trans person, but we're in the like trenches together. Like we're doing some of the hardest work you're ever going to do in any industry, elbow to elbow. At the end of the day, we're all chefs in the kitchen, so it really doesn't matter. Right now, where I'm at, I luckily have a very supportive crew, a lot of queer folk there, even like, you know, the cis het folk are very supportive. And when they mess up, of course they mess up, they correct themselves and they move on. I can't really say there's many experiences in a kitchen where you're going to have an issue because one, it is an industry that queer people tend to gravitate towards. And also, it is so focused on getting the job done that things like gender sort of fall to the wayside after a while.
Just like you just want to get things done and get out. You have no time to focus on anything else but the job.
I want to get this food out, this girl cleaned, and go home.
Right. Because I mean, I've heard and I can watch Hell's Kitchen all I want, and even trying to cook something in my house, you know, I've realized like doing this for an hour is difficult. If I'm doing this for 12 hours, like on my feet, I just can't even imagine day after day.
Yeah, it's one of the most like backbreaking, emotionally, physically demanding jobs there is. If I could leave with everybody with one message that's not like transportation, respect your food workers. We go through a lot.
No, I absolutely. The tip, you know, when we give tips to make sure, like I always say, like, what about the people working back there too? I mean, like, you know, it's kind of like,
if you ever want to help out, if you ever want to like tip the people in the back, buy them a round of beer. They will appreciate it.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you're a chef. So like, what's your favorite? Like, what if you had to go on like Hell's Kitchen or something? Like, what would you cook for Gordon Ramsay?
It would probably be something related to. There is a Midwestern phenomenon called the loose meat sandwich, which is like cooked ground beef. It is a very American sort of thing. I would cook one of the variants of it. Sloppy Joe is a form of it. I would cook one of the variants of that, probably one like a French onion soup burger or something like that. My food aesthetic is very Americana, stuff your grandmother's going to make in a casserole dish, you know.
Okay. That, you know what? That's the thing is like, if the actual chefs, the thing is like, I would go on the show just to be like, hear what horrible things he would have to say about my food, because you know, I'm sure that I can make sauces. That's about it.
Well, sauces are important. I mean, if you know your mother's sauces, you know half of French cuisine right there.
You definitely have to get you cooking, like getting some recipes. We do a potluck at Nationals or something.
Yes, I've been wanting to do a potluck for like ever.
I'm excited. We'll start this up. So I know that we people may not know this, but we have performed together before. We've known each other. We live sort of in the same area, and before we even went live, we were kind of talking about some the things going on in Maryland and Baltimore, DC area, and I think it might be a cool idea because since you are a performer as well, talking about how things in the performance scene have changed since you decided to run for Trans USA and that came out.
I don't think much has changed in the few months that I have decided to run. I will say things have changed a lot since I originally started 10 years ago. I don't want to age myself. I'm old. But I started performing when I was like 23, when it was still like, there was still like blue balls in Baltimore where like you could get arrested if you weren't wearing 3 articles of your clothing, and there was also way more diversity in the scene. You know, the guys were working, the girls were working, the kings were working. Everybody was working. Nowadays, that's not so much anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, even since COVID, the shift in what we see in the scene and what we've seen afterwards has been different. And I kind of want to ask, since, you know, this will be also, should you win, and even as mayor, part of what you've been doing is kind of speaking out against on some of the issues that have been affecting the community in the drag world too. So bridging that gap, I know, has been a big part for you. Like, okay, how do I bring the advocacy work to the drag scene? And I kind of wanted to, I've seen some posts about you, but maybe you want to tell people like how you've been doing that already with your title.
Well, I want to make it very clear. I want to bring it back to drag. Drag was originally advocacy. Drag was originally us making spaces for queer people to exist in, where we did not have to worry about the outside world affecting us. Drag, stage performance, queer entertainment, queer nightlife, whatever you want to call it, has gotten too much about the dollar and not enough about the community. We no longer watch out for each other. We no longer take care of each other. There's no longer the gay doctor down the street. Right. I don't want to date you either, but I know you're old enough to remember a day where there was the gay doctor, the gay lawyer, the gay banker, all on the same block.
Yeah, I wear my hat for a reason.
But those are like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. But,
I want to bring that back. And I think with my title, I brought it back to Maryland by saying, this is something I'm going to bring to Maryland. Even if I don't win this year, even if I don't place at nationals, even if I come in dead last, I still am showing that this is something people care about in Maryland and that we will care about going forward. Because next year, I will make sure that somebody runs again next year, because I'm not going to be the only one to do this for us.
And that's I've seen like the way you've been doing this online already and out representing, and it's that wonderful space that we get to bridge the gap, or we get to go to different spaces. Some of the spaces are drag spaces, some of them are other types of entertainment spaces, and some of them are, you know, being where we are, we can go down to DC with these sashes, with these gowns, and it's being able to navigate all those different spaces. And I love seeing how you've been able to do that. And so I guess on the flip side, if there were something you could like get a committee in DC to speak about an issue for maybe 1 hour, what specific trans issue would you talk about?
Without a doubt, my number one go-to is homeless trans people of color. That has to be the number one issue. You know, I'm lucky. I have a lot of privilege. You know, I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm a conventionally attractive, like, relatively skinny white person. I don't face many uphill struggles as a trans individual. I understand this. We need to discuss our BIPOC and Black brothers and sisters and what we are going to do for them as the people with the power in the conversation as white people. That's what I'm starting committee for.
That's absolutely amazing. And because I mean, and especially being in Baltimore for so long, and how heavily impacted the communities there are.
Oh yeah, and they're still being impacted to this day. There's still certain areas in Baltimore where certain venues have a presence that don't like color-specific members of the community, and they will get pushed out of the neighborhoods that have been historically theirs for years and years and decades now.
Yeah, and then I think that that's something that, you know, that issue, that opportunity, I think, is going to come up, you know, that they're seeing our presence and we be able to organize something around that. But that's why I'm asking everybody, like, okay, let's start getting these things going. And I think you've been a pretty big part of like leading people in discussions too. You said a lot of your work online too. I mean, you know, ruffling some feathers, starting some conversation. You know, it's
I've always been the one,
right? And it's not always. It's not like people think it's a bad thing, but somebody, you know, it's got to get, some things just got to get brought up. Some things got to get talked about.
So, there's always been. I look up to a lot of the orators we've had in history. There's always been people that have been fiery and have been outspoken about situations, and I can just consider myself another step in that. It's not my fault my words aren't always laced with academia and education, but I'm going to get my point across to you and people know what I mean.
And every perspective, Matt, and sometimes somebody, I can say this, and then you'll be like, you know what, this is actually what needs to be said. And when people like slap me in the face and say, no, you don't have to be too nice about it, I really enjoy that, actually. Not to say I'm a glutton for
yeah.
pain.
Like, there's a group on Facebook, and it's one of my favorite tag groups, although it's like quasi-problematic at times. It's the tolerant left is down the hall. We punch Nazis here, and that's like my whole vibe anymore.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, someday you just got to do it.
So we're talking about punching Nazis and punching people. Like, I think we've had heavy conversation right now. It's pretty big issues, but I always kind of like throw in like some fun things, some other things that are just out there. So this would be a great question, just based on what we've been talking about. We've been talking a lot about pet peeves lately, and we're talking about like the super serious, like this is a deal breaker kind of situation, but the ones that if you told anybody what they were, you'd be like, why do you even care? Like I give the example for myself. That's if somebody's clipping their fingernails or toenails, I have to go to another room because I can't stand the sound. It makes me angry.
I vibe with you on that one. Because I do a lot of backpacking and camping and all, and one of like the courtesy things is when you come into a camp at night to switch your light to a red light. If somebody comes into a camp, even just like down the trail without their red light on, it sends me into an irrational rage. And not even for myself, for other people.
I get you saying, so instead of like a bright white light,
it gives like a nice gentle red light, like a red light room that you can still see and work by. You can still tie your knots and everything, but it doesn't wake other people up. It doesn't really affect people. But like people will come in full headlight and just be shining everywhere. I know it's so irrational and out there, but that's one of the biggest pet peeves.
Okay, I can understand. I've gone camping maybe like twice, and it's it was one of those things. It was in high school, and so we were never prepared for anything. So maybe that was why I had such a horrible experience. We had like an ear of corn and a jug of water. And it's not even. But
yeah, being prepared is one of the big things for like if you go to backpack or camp successfully, you got to be prepared.
Yeah, and of course, I think that if I went with somebody experienced, like you and some friends, like it would be much better.
Oh yeah, I'll take you out. Don't worry, I got you. I'll take you out.
So yeah, pet peeve. That's a good one. So since we're both performers, like, what is your dressing room pet peeve? You got a list.
I'm gonna sound like somebody's old grandmother, but when people are in a dressing room, direct the conversation to the whole room. If you ain't got something, if it's a private conversation that needs to be had, take somebody to the side, let everybody know I'm gonna go have a private conversation. But when we're all chilling, getting ready, direct the conversation to the room. Don't stand in your little corner. Be friends.
No, that's really important. It's not just like a little pet. It's actually a pretty big etiquette thing, in the community. Like, make everybody feel included. Like, no matter if you think you're the national, and think you're important. You've never met somebody before. I'm like, that's actually the most important time to make people feel included.
Yeah, like, because that's how you're gonna get like. Speaking of pageantry, that's how you get somebody into a system. Like, that's all it took for me many years ago to try to run for Miss Gay America. The current Miss Maryland stopped me in the hallway of Leon's and was like, "You're so beautiful," and that was it. I was running for America.
It's something that just kind of comes up too, like casually. Like, you never know the kind of conversation you're going to strike up with somebody.
Yeah, you might find somebody that you have something in common with, that you got a new best friend, and that's all it takes.
Yeah,
you might find yourself in a national pageant.
Right. I mean, that's how we were at a show together. That's exactly how this happened.
That's literally how it happened. You and I were. You were head judge. I was performing at King of Mixers, and yeah, you somehow managed to convince me, and I was sober.
I have that effect on people, right?
Greatest decision of my life.
Oh, you cut out for a second. I didn't hear the last part.
I said greatest decision of my life.
I mean,
just running for this.
And I think it's got more to come too. So coming to the national, like, I see everyone getting excited. I'm getting excited, and I think that maybe that's so we can go kind of into the competition itself. So when we talk about nationals for Trans USA, we've been talking about all the things that are going on, and I've kind of been asking, like, is there any one category in particular you're most nervous about?
Oh, probably Evening Down always runs me, and what I'm planning for it is kind of a little out there. Um, I don't hide what I do in pageants, so I know what I'm talking about it. But what I'm doing is a little out there. But I am basing it off of like real life pageant dresses. Um, and also Evening Gown is the one category that us alternative queens always kind of struggle with a little bit, you know.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's not necessarily like it may be a both ends kind of thing, because there's so many alternative looks you can do, and I think that sometimes people knowing what you're going for and trying to see people like you in a pageant. I think that's it's kind of been hard, because when I see certain looks too, I'm sure you're like, well, it's great, but that's not me,
Yeah, that's a lot of my energy with a lot of pageant looks. Like I love the good gowns, the Wangs, the Vegas, I love them all, but I can't be wearing a gown that literally weighs half as much as I do. That's not my style.
And like, luckily though, this category is not it's not designed to be like that.
Which I was really thrilled about. It'll give me, that's something that I love that this pageant is doing. It's giving chance for both men and women a chance to show the humanity behind all the glitz and glam, behind all the stuff we see on TV, behind all the internet.
Yeah.
It's us at our core.
Yes, and in like, just as you would see in some of like a Miss America pageant, the types of evening gowns like that people they would wear, or like at like the GLAAD Awards, something like that. Yeah. So it's really
in one of mine off of Miss Universe from this year. Not an exact like match, but it has a story to go with it. It's a local young trans woman is going to be making it for me, and her mother is like one of the queer mothers in Baltimore. So I'm keeping everything as local as I can.
I actually think that's amazing, and that's just something that I'm gonna make sure that when we give the bios, like, and if people send them in, that we read like that's going to be out there, because you're bringing everything back to like locally Maryland. Like, this is trans people in Maryland. I think it's really sweet.
That's what I want to do. We're lucky. We're one of the better states for us, so might as well encourage folks to move here.
That's one of the things, like, living here as well. I've lived in a lot of different places, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, like all over. And it's been, as far as inclusivity and just acceptance, a little bit easier than in West Virginia. And that's kind of something that maybe we can touch on too. So it's really easy, not to say really easy, but it's relatively easier here for trans people. So how would you kind of make that connection with people, let's say in, Arkansas right now, places where things are not so easy?
The way I connect with them simply by virtue of I've had that same experience. Maryland wasn't always this progressive. There were still like I said earlier, there were still laws in the books 10 years ago that were problematic for us. I understand that it's still very hard in a lot of places in this nation to simply exist in your own skin as your authentic self. And I know moving is not always an option, but forming communities, be it online or in your hometown, or even sometimes in your own house if you live in a multi-member household, that's a way to really find the community to help these people. And I would connect with them on a personal level too. If anybody needs me, my inbox is always open. I always say that because I'm everybody's uncle, so I'm here to talk.
I mean, that's, you kind of got the hit, because I think people don't always realize that the responsibility you take on when you have this kind of role with Trans USA as even a state title holder. Like, people will, you'll start meeting people that they see that, oh, this is Miss Trans Maryland, I can definitely come to her about this, and then that keeps amplifying. And so it may take me 24 hours or so to see through the list, but I'm constantly like checking, and the fact that you're already starting to do that and making those connections with people that are way outside of our state, like, but that's fantastic. And I think you hit on a really cool point there. Like, you can start a group in your own basement of people in your community and just go grow from there. How many big movements in our culture have been started just by little groups getting together? You know?
Yeah, in somebody's basement, in somebody's bedroom. And it also brings back like the notion of queer family, something I think a lot of us struggle with, especially trans people, because we're still like the most marginalized within our own families at times as members of the queer community, because we are, I don't want to say more hard to understand because it's not that hard to understand, but a lot of people struggle with the concept of transness. You're able to make your own family wherever you're at, even if it's with somebody who's just an ally. That's still your family.
Right. And like, I think that, this, I almost want to say like this idea goes so much against like what American family definitions are, because the idea that it's like just this nuclear family thing is a very Western sort of like American kind of like other countries, just like 15, 20 people, like they're all living together and they just extended family. And, going against anything and that seems like it seems, that's
un-American, unpatriotic, because, my mother's like some 30-some-year-old Pisces drag king that has like a leather fetish, like
yeah, like and for us it's we get into the community, we're so involved, and at some point I remember being younger and being like, oh wow, this is, but now it's just like, oh yeah, whatever,
this is normal.
It's just normal.
I'm getting the pleasure of like re-experiencing that first time out in the community, because my partner has only been out for about 2.5 years. I am the first non like cishet relationship long term he's been in. So I have the joy and like the trauma sometimes of him like realizing these things are like part of our community. Like something will happen and he'll just be like, oh my God, that's just like so weird. I'm like, that's normal. That's like a Tuesday for us.
That's Kyle.
Yeah, that's Kyle. He's into wearing that pup mask all the time. Just,
and it's just normal. It's something you don't even think about. And I guess, but if you're on the inside of any community, like you won't notice the things other people do. So it's always good to have that outside perspective too, just to keep yourself in perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it kind of hits me on another question. I know that was one of them that we talked like throughout there. So we talk about, people thinking things are really weird or really out there. There's a lot of misconceptions that people have about trans people or the trans community. What do you think right now is the biggest one that's kind of a hurdle for everybody?
Probably that, like, people think we care about what they're doing and what their children doing way more than we really do. At the end of the day, one of the biggest misconceptions about trans people is that we want anything more than just to be left alone in our lives.
I kind of agree. I agree with like people think there's some kind of trans agenda. It's my Monday through Tuesday, 3:00. I do this, right? Like,
yeah, it's getting up, going to work. I'm struggling just as hard as everybody else is. My life ain't any easier, any harder. We are all, and I hate this kind of language because, like, at the end of the day, there are all systems in place, blah blah blah. But we are all literally human. My experience is still different than yours. That's it.
Yeah. I agree with it, and I do see what you're saying there, because I always say this to people like, oh, we're all the same. Like, they don't, when you say that, I'm like, you shouldn't have to think that everybody's the same to treat people exact opposite. We're all different and we still deserve all respect, like.
Yeah, like we can all be different, but we can all be, like the same. We are all so hippy dippy, but it's so true. We're all individual, connected.
It's like the idea that we all have to be similar for you to treat me with respect is not exactly how this is supposed to work.
Yeah. In fact, you should treat me with more respect because I have the, whatever you want to call it, to be myself, to live my life.
And then, because I think people are afraid of that. I think we've talked about like a lot of this before. Like when people come out as trans, it kind of throws a wrench in the works, especially people they knew, because if, how many people struggle with feelings of not feeling, masculine or feminine enough. If somebody takes that, like it forces them to think about how they feel about themselves, and that can be frightening.
I
Like,
always say one of the reasons cis men throw so much vitriol at trans women is because they have to come to terms with the fact that there are people out there willing to give up male privilege for happiness, and that they aren't willing to do that, like give up any of their privilege, be it for their own happiness, healthiness, or the happiness and healthiness of those around them. So they just lash out at us.
yeah, and it's just like, how dare you do that thing that I can't, like, even if it's in some small way, like somebody who's afraid to even, have a tiny dog or a pink, bag, like, because it's, if those little things even bother people like that, like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't get that.
yeah.
I hate to be like, let the kid play with the Barbie, but like, let your son play with the Barbie. He might learn how to braid hair.
That's a useful skill.
That's useful.
Yeah. So yeah, we can go on. Like, I enjoy like kind of this, discussion. We could go on and on. We're hitting our time right now. I think so. We're gonna kind of circle back around to like two questions. One of them serious and one not so serious.
Okay.
Okay. The not serious question is because you know how much you haven't seen my dogs, I'm sure. My cute little fur babies, which are locked in the other room, and I've been asking everybody if you could have not just like a cat or a dog, but any kind of exotic pet, what would it be?
Oh, it's still kind of simple. A giant Finnish rabbit. I am you've met me. I'm a very large individual myself. I want all of the obnoxiously large house animals. Giant Finnish rabbit. They get like this big.
Oh, so those are the pictures I've seen, like that are okay.
Like 20-pound rabbits. I want a Maine Coon cat. I want like the Irish Wolfhound. I want like an oversized gerbil.
You know what? And then we could bring my tiny dogs. The gerbil will be bigger than my dog. One of
yes. I would love to have like a Chihuahua-sized hamster.
Yeah, Zephyr's about 4 or 5 pounds, so I'm sure that can happen.
God, my kitties are already bigger than that.
Yeah, he's tiny. So that we need to get this list together too at nationals. I'm going to try to figure out some crazy like little thing. But so the last thing, as we were kind of like wrapping up with this, is we've been talking a lot about your plans and the things you do in the community already, and as people who really are into the advocacy and doing that work on the ground, we always look forward to the next project, the next fight, the next battle we have, and the things that we can do for people when we run for titles. But if you could take anything personally out of this experience, like what's the one thing you'd want to take away from nationals for yourself?
Probably just how to interact and network on a much grander, more visible scale than I've been able to do before. This is going to be seen by people all over the country. That's a way to get my voice out there, my experience out there, and my boost in power and my, I'm blanking on the word, magnifying power of other people's voices that need to be heard more than my own.
I think that's probably one of the best things that you can ask for that. And you will, like, you're right. People will see this, and it's our job to make sure that they do see what everybody has to offer. And that's why we're doing videos like this for everyone. That's why we're getting these messages out early, because we really want people to follow that along the way too, to get behind you and see where your journey goes. And so I think that, I'm excited for it. I mean, you saw me, I'm getting crazy. Like,
I'm so excited. I just keep thinking about it. Like, just the joy of being able to hang out with so many people in my community from so many different backgrounds and just be able to share like our knowledge and our skills together to make this happen. It's just the most fulfilling part of this for me already.
You want to put that dish in your mouth?
Hey folks, I'm Heather Marie Thomas, your Miss Trans Maryland 2023, and I'm running for Miss Trans USA 2023, and it didn't take much motivation to get me to run for it. I've been an activist and an advocate for my community for as long as I can remember, and now we are facing trying times more than ever, and we need to come together as a community and do this, and I've decided that this is the way I can do it, by raising my voice on a national stage and representing myself and my community. It is important for me to show that we are just humans, that trans folk are just like everybody else, and we want nothing more than to live our lives and to have the best experiences that we can. I am Heather Marie Tater Salad Thomas, your Miss Trans Maryland 2023.
Yeah, you wanna put that dish in your mouth.